Well, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. I was trying to think which episode. What am I doing today? I've been doing so many classes, sharing so many things, like several of you were last night on our the Awareness Academy because you guys are members. So we were doing a deep dive and had a little bit of healing there. But anyways, whether this is the first time that you've attended an Ascension with A Course in Miracles or you've been a regular, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart because these transmissions that come through me are only possible because I received the guidance that there are people who want to hear a deeper understanding of the Course in Miracles. The course was given to us over 50 years ago so that we would be prepared for these times right now. Our minds had to be unwound. We had to train our minds to think with God and not with ego because the ascension process, and that's why this is called Ascension with A Course in Miracles, we are in the middle of an ascension process. Everybody is welcome to participate. And as the Course says, although a lot of people want to experience freedom, a lot of people want to experience peace, few are willing to do the work that is necessary to get there. And some of you ladies can attest to what we talked about last night in our advanced Course in Miracles class. We have to go through a process of purification. And it is not an easy process. It's actually very uncomfortable. We have to face the places within us where we're telling ourselves lies. And it's not that we are denying what happened. Things have happened that are experiences that we have in this human journey, but they do not define us unless we lie to ourselves and say that they do. And that's what's so important to understand about the Course in Miracles. So today, June the 4th, this is a 200th episode of Ascension with the Course in Miracles. I think 10 episodes back, I got a little ahead of myself and I thought it was a 200th episode. So if you've heard me say that twice, this will be the only episode that will actually have that number on the photo, the thumbnail in YouTube. But today we're just going to be continuing with what we've been doing all along here. We're in A Course in Miracles. We're in chapter 3. And in chapter 3, we are in section number 7, which is the title of it is Creating versus Self-Image. Now, the course is so detailed in breaking down every single little area, every nuance that has to be looked at for us to experience the liberation that the course promises will be our experience because it's our birthright. Our birthright is freedom. To get to that freedom, and it's not freedom just from governments or religion, or it's freedom to recognize that we are the creators of our reality. It's the freedom that acknowledges that whatever we are experiencing, we're experiencing because freely, with free will, we chose to have these experiences. Now, A Course in Miracles is designed to bust all of our illusions, and that we are separate human beings apart from God is an illusion. If you are not ready to take that on because you're living in the world, you got the bills to pay, the kids are screaming, the husband left, or the wife is cheating, or the boss fired you, or your house burned down, the volcano erupted, lava's coming down, you're running away, and you've got a myriad of different options that are getting your attention, and your focus is on what's happening outside. The Course in Miracles is not for you, because the course is for those who are ready to take responsibility for what's happening on the inside. That means you're going to become the responsible for your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts, your experiences. If you are not prepared for that, the course will only take you so far. If you're looking for a spiritual book that is well known and you happen upon the course, or maybe you've been a student of it for a long time and you still don't get it, which is typically the kind of students that I get are the ones who have had the course for a long time and they don't get it. And the reason is because there has to be a maturity that recognizes I don't get what the course is saying. And that is actually a beautiful thing because it's an honesty that states the course is telling me that this world is an illusion, that, I'm not a body. Please help me understand that. A desire to understand something that sounds so nonsensical to the average human means that there is a readiness, there's a seriousness to want to get to know the truth. And the reason there's a seriousness is because you feel something inside of you that tells you this is really, this is the next step for me. I know that there's something in the course that is going to help make all the other learnings that I have had click. And it's because, as it states in the introduction, it's a required course. Not that the Course in Miracles is the only one with the information that will set us free. Buddha didn't have a Course in Miracles. Jesus didn't have a Course in Miracles. Gandhi didn't have a Course in Miracles, but they did what was required, which was to come to understand the way the mind works. When you understand the mind, then you have a doorway to come to know what God is. Buddha, that's not what Buddha did. Buddha did not come to know God. Buddha came to know the mind. All of the Buddhist teachings are really about the psychology of the mind. There's nowhere in Buddhism that it talks about God, that it talks about a relationship with a loving God and cultivates that. That's not what Buddhism is about. However, you cannot come to have a relationship with a loving God until you train your mind to stop fearing the world, to stop arguing with the world, because in those arguments, in that trying to survive the world, in that suffering that is inherent in being a human who is listening to the ego, in that suffering, we are blocking our ability to have a relationship with God. So Buddhism is an important step, but then you got to go through that door that Buddhism leads you to, which is what the Course in Miracles does. It trains your mind, it leads you to a door. You are the one who has to step through that door. You are the one who has to accept, well, if God is love and I'm made of God and I'm made of love and I'm one with that, then comes the exploration of then what does love do? What am I as a loving being? Which is something that most of us, I'm going to say all of us who incarnate, do not fully understand. The love that humanity operates from is a very conditional love because it says, if you do this, then I love you. If you do that, I'm going to stop loving you. Those are all conditions. If you clean up your room, I love you. If you mess up your room, mommy, daddy is going to be upset with you. Well, if you're upset, that's not love. If you're upset, you're withholding love. So to understand what love is, that is only possible when you train your mind to see all the ways that you have blocked love. And the course is really clear. It's not teaching you what love is. That's impossible to teach. But it does help you understand all of the ways that we have blocked love. When we understand how we block love, then love just comes out. And as love comes out, you will know the difference between the conditional love of the ego and the unconditional love of source. Period. There's just no other way to do this. And that's one of the things that I'm so excited about the Awareness Academy, and anybody who wants to participate in the Academy. We even have a free program. I'm going to tell you exactly how to get there. So to reach the Academy, go to theawarenessacademy.com/membership. When you get there, there are three options to join. The curiosity stage, if you're just curious and you just want to check things out, you could even be a long-time student of the course, but maybe you don't know me well. So you're just curious about me. It's free. There's no cost. I do a basic Course in Miracles class. But there's a couple of courses, like an introduction to A Course in Miracles, that's available to you only through the Academy. If you are a little bit more serious on your path and you want to dive into the course and you want to take more of an advanced look at the Course in Miracles, which is a class that we were doing last night that some of you were there. And in that class, we dive into the course and we do I do coaching to integrate the what we're learning. And last night, sweet sister here had a healing. And what that is all about is to really take a look at the course from a more metaphysical perspective. You got to get out of your head. Your head is not going to understand the course. It's not possible. And if you start studying the course and you come to the place where you take what it says literally in terms of, oh, this world is just an illusion, nothing is real, and you stay there in denying that anything is real, well, you're going to end up creating some suffering for yourself. Number one, people are not going to like you. You're just constantly denying whatever they're happening because it's not real. And I know because I did that. But you haven't gone far enough to get to the door that leads to the heart because the course is about getting you to open the door, getting you to open all of the blocks that you have built to the love that wants to come out, that wants to extend itself through you. And that's $44 a month. If you want to take a much deeper dive, I call this the mastery stage. If you are at a place where you know you're spiritual, maybe you're a healer, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a coach, and maybe you've written books, maybe you have a following, but you still experience fear, you still experience doubt and conflict, and you watch the news and you're distraught, then you may want to go deeper. You may want to understand why that suffering is happening. And that's 222 per month. And of course, it includes everything that all the levels include. But there's a lot that I'm going to be doing inside of that community because to me, if you're willing to make that kind of an investment, you're serious about this work. And when we do it in community, it goes by faster and it is a lot more impactful. Like in the class last night, one person went through a process and experienced some healing, and the other person, it wasn't their story, but they could relate to it, and they could also experience a healing as well. Because when two or more are gathered, there is a love that is there. And the Course in Miracles was designed to help us navigate the ascension. So let me talk about what this ascension is. For thousands upon thousands of years, humanity has been incarnating. Basically, we are in the mind of God, making a decision that we're human. So we experience ourselves in the third dimension of consciousness, meaning we contract ourselves to deliberately forget a lot of the truth of who we are. And then we have this experience that we're on planet Earth and we project this world out there that is a reflection of the suffering and the discomfort that is within us. The primary projection is separation. I'm separate from you. In this game of separation, humanity has for millions, wait, thousands of years. Planet's been here for millions of years, maybe billions, but for thousands upon thousands of years, humanity has been playing this game. I call it divine hide and seek, where we decide to hide the truth from ourselves and then we play the game. We're born into specific families and we get programmed with what those families believe. If we're born into a royal family, we think we're the kings and we think we're the 1%. If we're born into a middle class family, we think, okay, well, I'm middle class and I got to go to college. I got to learn how to do something and create a business or take over the family business, get a job, white collar job, maybe become a CEO of a company. So we play the game that way. And some come in poverty and I don't have much and I'm part of the bottom. I'm the blue collars or poor people or whatever, starving children in India, whatever the game that we play, whatever area that we come into as our belief in separation takes us to those areas, we get indoctrinated with information specific to that experience. If you want, before to wake up, you literally would have to go through lifetime after lifetime, experiencing karma, bouncing from one side to the other. If you were rich in one lifetime, you'll be poor in the next one. If you were a man in one, you might be a woman in the next one. If you were an abuser, a bully in one, you might be a victim in the next one, because we're moving back and forth as a pendulum moves, because the ego is not stable. The ego is crazy. It's erratic. It swings from one side to the other, and it is playing all those different roles because it can. That's the only reason it does it. If you get to the point that you really realize this is truly a game, that it is played at the highest levels of consciousness, we literally are choosing to experience what we're not. When that makes sense, then you are ready for something advanced, because the point of moving into mastery is to take control of your mind now. You don't have to wait till you end a life and on the other side realize, oh my gosh, I'm one with all that is. What we're doing right now is waking up while we're here in this life. We don't have to die to remember the truth. We are being born again to the truth right here, right now. The reason for that is when we have the death experience in the old 3D energy, let's call it that, the 3D frequency, you had to die to, on the other side, realize, okay, this is a game I want to come back in and play. And then you forget and you play the game not remembering, and that's okay. But right now, so many of us, and I'm going to say the bulk of humanity, knew that we were coming in to this lifetime to wake up now, not having to die to remember, but having an awakening, having an experience of remembering while we're still in physical form. The only reason is so that we can then play the game consciously, so that we can begin to realize, oh my gosh, this is truly an amazing experience. I can be part of the team that is going to co-create heaven on earth. Course in Miracles calls it a happy dream. Instead of living your life, waiting for a happy dream to happen, in this lifetime, many of us have volunteered to co-create that happy dream. And it starts with ourselves. We have to become the change we want to see in the world. We have to be the happy person that can look at what's happening and realize it has no power over me. Now, what do I want to do instead? If you don't, no longer enjoy the game of the drama and the trauma and the lying and the cheating and the idolizing others and just accumulating stuff to make you feel happy and safe, if you're done with that because you realize none of it has power over you, then in your beautiful heart, with your powerful imagination, you begin to give shape to the new world. You begin to activate inside of you the ideas of what would this new earth look like? What would life look like if we're all loving each other, if we're all transparent, if we're all honest, if we're all respectful of each other, if we collaborate, if we cooperate, if there are no more secrets, what would life look like? Well, to be able to imagine that, you can't be busy battling the life of oppression and lies and cheating and aging and sickness and hunger. You can't be giving time and attention to those low frequencies and co-create high frequency experiences. Those are two polar opposite things. You have to pick one or the other. When you make a commitment to A Course in Miracles, it is going to take you on a deep dive to help you see how your mind got trained into believing low frequency thoughts. The thoughts of people outside of you having authority over you, that the church, that your mother, father, that your teacher, that the government have authority over you. That's all made up. All of that is by agreement by an ego that wants to experience. Some have power and some don't. And if you're thinking that you're the one with power and you're beginning to see the errors of your ways, you're beginning to see how you made decisions that have been harmful to humanity, that you contributed to greedy things. For example, let's say you might have gone up in positions to pharmaceutical companies, and you knew that there are wonderful treatments that have been suppressed, that have been put, potential cures have been put in a drawer somewhere because they went against the possibility of making big profits. If you are in one of those positions where you force people to believe things that were not true, maybe you were in the church and you've realized, wow, that what the church teaches about God being on a cloud somewhere, this angry father, you realize that's not true, and you have some guilt and some shame. Course in Miracles is going to meet you at the place to help you heal that guilt and that shame, because it's going to help you understand the true meaning of forgiveness. If you are someone who has just given your power away to others and you have been victimized by the decisions, maybe to take shots that made you sick and you thought you were doing the right thing and you forced your family, your children to do that, and you're feeling the guilt and or the anger or the resentment or whatever, Course in Miracles will meet you right there to heal that as well. The Course wants you to understand how powerful you are, but you have to be willing to accept that power and take 100% responsibility for your experience. You don't have to wait to die to find out that you're free. You can if you want to. Free will. You will never be punished. You will never God's not going to point the finger because you chose not to wake up while you are in human form. But if you are wanting to wake up while you're in human form, come to the Course in Miracles knowing that it's all that it's going to do is put 100% of the responsibility on you to choose what kind of a life experience do you have. Do you want to experience it as a fun and joyful ride, even though there are things that are happening that are that could be labeled terrible, suffering for many? You still have the ability to assist in the ascension of the planet by removing your pointing the finger at those things, by calling them bad things, by seeing victims out there in a way that disempowers them. Instead, seeing powerful beings who are playing roles that are calling attention for healing. The Course is really, really simple. Everything is broken down into what does God say? What does the ego say? And when you keep it to that, everything is simple. There are no victims in this model. There are simply people who want to listen to the ego. When you listen to the ego, everything is going to be done in a selfish way. Everything is going to be about bullies and victims. And for there to be bullies, there need to be victims. For there to be victims, somebody has to play the role of bully. So these are contractual agreements that are decided for the purpose of the experience. Now, depending on where you are on your journey, that idea sounds terrible or that idea sounds liberating. If the idea that we have created contracts sounds liberating, is because you're ready to rewrite the contracts. If the idea that I never would have had a contract with this terrible parent or this terrible abuser, then you are in the space where the 3D world is really real and has power over you. It's going to be really hard to understand what the Course is saying. So you have to be honest, which is one of the characteristics that the Course teaches. Somebody who is operating as a master of their own reality has to be honest. Honesty means you are consistent. You're consistently listening to the voice for truth. If you're not listening to the voice for truth, you're listening to the voice of lies. If you are believing that those lies are true, that others have power over you, You got to be honest. You're not mature enough in your spiritual journey to take responsibility for changing that. If you are curious and you want to begin to question why you think the way that you think, even if you can't quite change the outer world quite yet, but you are willing to begin to learn about it, please study the course. And again, I offer basic information to simplify it. I offer advanced teachings, and then I offer really out there. Let's talk about the 5D potential that we have the ability to bring about as our shared reality and co-create a happy dream. So depending on where you are, you have to be honest. Most people think that they're more advanced than they really are. Been there, done that. I understand that. And in that recognition of where we are in an honest way, we can begin the process of doing the healing that is necessary. So, as we continue in this section, as I said, this is episode 200 now. Inside of this creating versus self-image, what we're doing is we're putting things into two categories. God creates, the ego makes. We have made a self-image. We have made an image of ourselves as separate from God. And, some pretend that we are Christians or we're Jewish or we're Buddhist or whatever. We're making an image of who we think we are. Here, God creates, and when we align with God, we are accepting that we are as God created us. So, as a human, we have to be honest. Am I still making things up to add to me so that I can become somebody? Because that's all make believe. That's why we're making up this experience. That's why this experience has no power over us unless we say it has power over us. Here, if we acknowledge that God created us to create as the creator of our reality, well, we're not going to leave anything to chance. We're not going to say things out there can affect us. We are then taking full responsibility for what we are experiencing. And then it goes on to tell us that, this whole idea of the devil, this is something that was made up to frighten us. And it's part of what religion has done. Because if you get to understand that in this human world, in the world of haves and have-nots, those who make themselves authority over others, and they think that I'm the king or I'm the president or I'm the CEO or I'm the parent or I'm the Pope, when they assume that they have power over others, to keep others in line, we have to create stories. The boogeyman's going to come get you. If you do something you're not supposed to do, you're going to get in trouble. And there's always blaming somebody. So the church and governments created the boogeyman, the devil. So the Course in Miracles tells us that the devil deceives by lies. So we have to understand, what are those lies that we have been deceived by? What are those lies that we deceive others with, that we deceive ourselves with? So to understand that there is absolutely no such thing as the fall of man, or the separation of man, humans. That did not happen. We are not separate from God at all. We just have a belief in separation. So it tells us here that we have discussed the fall or separation before, but its meaning must be clearly understood. The separation is a system of thought, real enough in time, though not in eternity. So while we are believing what we were told when we were little children, that God is going to punish us if and turn us into a pillar of salt if we don't behave. It's no different than Santa Claus is not going to bring you a toy if you're naughty, or mommy is going to give you a spanking if you're not a good kid. These stories of something with authority that is going to hurt you is an idea we have bought into. As we individually clear our mind, train our mind to think correctly, we will realize, okay, that's made up. Once you realize it's made up, you're not living underneath the tyranny of something external punishing you. But you have to take responsibility for acknowledging that God did not create the devil, that God did not create Satan. God did not even create the ego. The ego is a decision, a belief to not accept what God says. So we have to override our thought system. We have to, and again, this is where it takes a lot of courage and honesty. You have to acknowledge that the thoughts that hurt you are not true. You've got to stop believing your own thoughts, something that is very challenging to do because we don't want to be wrong. And we don't want to be wrong because we were conditioned in school that being wrong means that you're a failure. So there is a lot of unwinding of the mind that has to take place. Most people enter the spiritual journey because they like the woo-woo stuff. They want to have angel wings and halos, and they just want to have beautiful transcendent moments, but they don't want to do the work of facing their own darkness because our darkness in here projects the darkness out there. And while you're thinking you're a victim, you don't want to take responsibility for the darkness in the world. And while you're being a bully, you don't want to acknowledge that there's any darkness in you, that there's anything victimy in you because you're in the bully position and you're the one who thinks that you have power over others. Nobody has power over anybody. It's just not possible. We were all created equal. But to accept that, you have to come to know the truth of who you are. Then last week, we were looking at, this whole symbolic idea that we ate of the fruit of knowledge, that we ate of the forbidden fruit in the garden. Well, God wants us to understand that we were created. I'll read the sentence. Yet God created knowledge and gave it freely to all creation. God gave us the ability to know what is true and what is not true. And the only way to know that is you have to feel it. When you feel truth, you feel a sense of yes. When it is not true, you feel a tightness, a contraction, like you recognize that, oh, that's lowering my frequency, lowering my vibration. So we have this incredible GPS system, but like the GPS in our car, it doesn't work if you don't turn it on. And the GPS inside of us is the acknowledgement of how the body feels. But you cannot rely on a body that has been holding so much density because it's contracted and it's tight and tense. And that's where our illnesses come from. You're not at ease, so you have dis-ease. So we have to go through a process of cultivating a relationship with our physical vessel. To be able to experience that, you've got to heal the body of traumas, meaning you got to go to your mind, look at all of the stories that you're telling yourself that are not true. You ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so you've categorized the world by good and bad, right and wrong. If you're holding stories that somebody did you wrong, then you are holding in your body love. You're withholding love from these people who wronged you, not understanding that you're hurting yourself because you're keeping yourself from being this pure vessel that's extending love by being one that's withholding love out of protection. So we have to understand that God created knowledge and we need to tap into that knowledge. But we have to first humble ourselves to realize we cannot possibly know it all. Not one of us can know everything, especially when we are having a life with blinders on and I'm just living my life here. I can't know what's going on in China. I can't really know what's going on with the indigenous people in the Amazon. I can't really know what happened with people who came to this country 250 years ago and created this republic. You have to be so honest on this journey that you say, I really don't know much. I only know what Lina knows, and that's very little because it's all that's programmed in my mind. And then comes the curiosity, comes the willingness to at least go to, oh, I wonder why you think that. That's different than what I believe. Can you tell me more? How did you come to that? Well, humanity is not trained into being curious with one another because if we were curious with each other, the whole game would collapse. We would be curious with the presidents and the kings and the CEOs and go, why are you telling me I have to do that? You would have a certain autonomy to say, you know what, I don't agree with what you're saying, so I'm not going to do it. But if we did that, then we couldn't have the game of haves and have-nots, because we have a system of this is right and this is wrong and this is the law and this is what you do, all created by the ego. We take sides and we argue with each other, or we take a stand and we get mad at each other. Politics is about that. Religions have been turned into that. Even sports teams, you take a side. People kill each other at soccer games. I mean, it's crazy because we take sides, because we're conditioned to take sides. And the sides that we take are we need to be right because we don't want to be wrong. When that's what the ego's doing, it is always defending what it believes. It is not open to hearing what anybody else says. So we have the knowledge inside of us. God placed it inside of us to know what is true and what is not. But the ego overrides that knowledge by telling us that to not know is to be stupid. And if you're stupid, somehow there's something wrong with you. So you decide that you have to be right, even if you're trying to protect things that are nonsensical. And everything that the ego believes is nonsensical. And I can assure you, it took me over a decade to get comfortable with the idea that I had been wrong my whole life. That was not an easy pill to swallow. But until I got comfortable going, I don't want to be right about anything. Because if I'm defending this old idea, I am not opening myself up to a new idea. You can't pour new wine in old wineskins. So you got to open yourself up to be a vessel that is comfortable enough, confident enough that you don't need to know it all. And I mean, it's liberation when you don't need to know it all. It's magical when you don't have to be right about anything. Your ego won't like it at first. My ego resisted. There were times that I was overriding my ego and I was saying, nope, I'm not going to start arguing with this person and defend my position. And my ego would be like inside saying, but we're going to be looking like we're idiots. And I would say, you'll be looking like you're an idiot if I let you talk. I am holding to the truth of who I am because I'm practicing that in my defenselessness, my safety lies. Once I realized what my ego was up to and I could see it clearly, then I realized, no, you have a place in the 3D world. I'm moving to the 5D world. In 5D, there is no ego. There is there's a slight experience of separation just so we can have this experience of incarnation. But your ego is not running the show. You are. You're right. You are running the show in alignment with God, listening to that guidance, humble enough to say, I don't know it all, and no longer arrogant in believing that your way is or the highway. So this is this is quite the journey. You got to first admit that you're wrong. You got to get curious about what else is there. Then you got to realize that God is the one who is the source of all knowing, and you're tapping into that. So you can never be the one who's going to get the credit except for choosing to align with the voice for God versus the voice for ego. Then you get all the credit, and that means you're awake. Most spiritual people are not awake because most spiritual people need to be right. Again, I know that, been there, done that. The need to be right blocks us from being happy, as the Course teaches. So let's go into paragraph number 4. Eating of the tree of knowledge is a symbolic expression for usurping the ability for self-creating. This is the only sense in which God and his creations are not co-creators. The belief that they are is implicit in the self-concept or the tenacity, or I'm sorry, or the tendency of the self to make an image of itself. In plain speak, when we took a bite of the tree of knowledge, meaning we decided to eat the bullshit that was being given to us, we decided to eat the knowledge that the church gave that God is out there and you're a sinner down here. When we decided to eat of the knowledge that government has power over you, that they know better than you instead of that they're just representing you. We bought into the bullshit that there's an authority outside of us. We began to be scared of them, that the police have power over you and they can determine if you're going to live or die. all of that is the knowledge that we have created. And then that allows us to have a self-image that I'm less, they're more. Or the reverse. If you're in those positions of authority, you decide that you have power to hurt somebody. You can use the government, the law, and hurt somebody. You can blame somebody. We've all heard stories of people who have been trapped. Stuff was put in their property deliberately to frame them. It doesn't matter what side you're on, that you're on the side of giving power to others or you're on the side of taking power from others. Either one, we're creating an image as a bully or a victim. God created us to create. And the creation that God gave us the power to do is to extend the kingdom of heaven, to extend what is loving, to acknowledge our equality, to do things that are for the greater good. Gandhi did that. He laid his life down so that all Indians could have freedom from the crown, from the British crown. He was saying, you, British crown, don't have power over me. I am made in the image of a creative source that says that I'm equal to you. You're not better than me. So we should live freely being Indians, and you go about being British and leave us alone from a place of knowing what was better for the Indian people. They were there to extend the kingdom as Indians, the kingdom of God, to express themselves in that unique way and not be oppressed by the British. So there's a lot that has to be understood about how we've gotten to where we've gotten to in this world. We have to understand that everything has a beginning. All thought systems start somewhere. Then in sentence number 4, still paragraph 4, it says, images are perceived, not known. So we perceive people with power because maybe they're carrying a gun, they have a certain uniform. Um, we perceive that the doctor has more power because they wear these white coats and they have a stethoscope around their neck, and so that's an authority. We create these images and then we perceive them as having power because we're giving it to them, because we ate of the tree of good and evil. We decided this is good, this is bad, and you live your life from good and bad. You're going to live your life always in some form of defense or attack. That's just the way it unfolds. Sentence 5 says, knowledge cannot deceive, but perception can. So the perception that the British had, we have power over you, we conquered you, you belong to us, they can perceive that all day long. Gandhi had knowledge. No, we're all equal and we get to have our own culture and we don't need to be told what you say, or we don't need to do what you say. So here's a man who, in a peaceful way, in his defenselessness, his safety was, he knew the truth of who they are as God created them, and with that, completely overturned the ruling of the monarchy over their people, their culture. Because when you know it in your bones, you don't have to defend it. Martin Luther King was another one. He knew it in his bone that we should not judge people by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Are you operating as a loving being? Are you operating in equality? That is more important than the color of your skin. We got lots of people with both all colors who are so deluded in thinking that they have power over others. And we have people of all colors who are so clear about the truth of who we are, they treat everybody with reverence. It doesn't matter their position. They know that they treat all brothers and sisters as equals because God created us that way. Sentence number 6 says, you can perceive yourself as self-creating, but you cannot do more than believe it. You cannot make it true. And as I said before, meaning Jesus, as I said before, because Jesus channeled this, when you finally perceive correctly, you can only be glad that you cannot. So you can believe all day long that you're less than or better than. You can believe that all day long, but you cannot make it true. You can create an experience that way. You can live like that for an entire lifetime. You can believe that you're a victim for 60, 70, 80, 90 years. Absolutely, you can believe that. But the minute you have that death experience, you realize, oh, wait a second, I was just playing that role. And if you're on the karma bandwagon and you're going to be incarnating in the third dimension again, then you're going to play the other side the next time because it's all about polarity. You got to go balancing back and forth. If you decide, oh, wow, I am so glad that it's not true that I'm a victim, then you're accessing higher dimensional thinking. You are now thinking more like God. You are now welcoming the truth that is true always, that your lies were denying, but didn't make them not true. And you begin to accept that you're the powerful creator of your reality, and you don't want to keep thinking thoughts that make you feel bad because you have learned to use the body as that GPS, that guidance that tells you, okay, here we go again with the victim story. This doesn't feel good. And you decide, I always contract when I believe that. And you decide, you know what? If I'm contracting, it's because it's not true. And you allow yourself to experience the truth of who you are, a powerful creator made in the image of a creator. Then you can say, if I don't want to keep thinking I'm a victim, what do I prefer to think? Well, it would feel really good to acknowledge that who I am was not my soul was not affected by what happened to my body. And then you separate the two. What happened to the body happened. But what you don't do is let the ego interpret it for you. Well, this happened to me and it's terrible. And now I can't use my voice and I can't, I have no power. I'm a victim. You can do that if you want to, but it's not the truth about who you are. The truth is that you're a powerful creator who chose to have that experience. That's all. You had the experience. Course in Miracles does not deny any experience that that you have had. It denies that the experience has power over the soul that you are as God created you. That's the only right use of denial according to the Course. We're denying that what happened has power over your soul, your spirit. Your soul, your spirit is untouched by your experience. Are you willing to pull those two parts apart? Are you willing to see the perfection of your soul, the innocence, the total and complete wonder and joy and power of your soul? If you're willing to do that, then you have to say, well, the ego is a mask that I wore. The ego is the stories that I told myself so I could experience what it's like to not be what I am. I know that this can be a mental trip, but that's what we're on. We're on a mental trip. Our mind got tripped up into believing things that are not true, and now we're correcting it. We are getting our mind to think rightly by accepting the truth of who we are. So until then, however, the belief that you can is the foundation stone in your thought system, and all your defenses are used to attack ideas that might bring it to light. I'll tell you, in almost 20 years of coaching, the only time that people argue with me about these teachings is when they argue for their own limitations. But Lina, this happened to me. And it could be years they'll still be saying that. But Lina, I can't, I can't change my mind about what happened to me. My question is always, why not? Why do you choose to believe the things that hurt you? Well, but it happened. Well, you can decide that it happened, but it doesn't have to affect you. But it affected me. So then you're choosing not to accept that you can decide it didn't affect you. And that is when people have some of the biggest ahas. You mean I can change my mind? Yes, that's free will. We can all change our mind about anything. The mind has two ways of thinking. If you're stuck in the egoic way, well, suffering is going to happen and you're going to believe that you can't change your mind. If, on the other hand, and this is what a miracle is, a shift in perception, you just decide, let me pretend for one day Just for one day, I'm going to listen, you don't have to do it for a day. Do it for 30 minutes. Let me pretend that I'm powerful and I can pick my thoughts and sit and watch any negative thought and say, no, 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 I'm pretending that I can pick my thoughts. I'm not going to believe that thought. You will feel quite differently. The body at first may not know what you're doing because now it's got two different masters. It's got the one that thinks it's a victim and the one that's saying I'm not a victim. So you will go through a period of what I call, bipolar spirituality, because you're in the middle of testing both ways of thinking and having the experience of them. Because once you have the experience that, oh, I don't have to accept that I'm a victim. And if I'm not a victim, then what am I? When you open yourself in curiosity, what am I if I'm not a victim? Well, I would be a confident person. I would say, I would speak and say whatever I say with confidence. I would not do things I don't want to do. I wouldn't just go along to get along. I wouldn't do those things. I could tell people that I don't want to be with. No, sorry, I've got other plans. If you play with that, you'll discover that you're going to enjoy being in that level of freedom and that level of peace. But you can't have that peace if you're standing under the banner, I'm a victim. I can't because of what happened to me 20, 30, 40 years ago, 5 lifetimes ago. But guess what? God's not going to punish you for playing whatever role you want to play because you were created to create and you're creating disempowerment. And that's okay. There is absolutely zero judgment from God in the game that you are playing. But there is an acknowledgement right now for this time that the course was written for, that those who don't want to play that game anymore have an opportunity to ascend to another level, have an opportunity to go to a different playground. Not that we're going to go to a different world. At least I don't believe that that's what's going to happen. There's just going to be a split in consciousness. Some are going to believe that they're powerful creators because they're aligned with God, and we're going to co-create a totally different experience on planet Earth. It's already happening. And then there are those who are going to believe that they are victims to the system and the system has power over them and all their goodness and safety comes from the system. And they're going to have to deal with the consequences of a system that is unraveling because there are too many of us, excuse me, that don't want that game anymore. And our desire for a world that is a lot more equitable is causing the old systems to break down. But if your power, what you're giving power to is the system, as it breaks down, it's going to be scary. You're going to think, oh my gosh, my safety is going away. No, what's happening is your safety is found in your freedom. But those who are looking for safety in bondage need somebody else to tell them what to do. But safety and freedom, it requires courage. Courage to stand up and accept that you are as God created you and stop putting people on a pedestal. That nobody is better than you unless you want to play that game and decide that they are. Sentence 10 says, you still believe that you are an image of your own making. Your mind is split with the Holy Spirit on this point, and there is no resolution while you believe the one thing that is literally inconceivable. While you think that you are separate from God and there are victims and bullies and bad things can happen to you, there is no amount of the Holy Spirit talking to you and communicating and giving you guidance that is going to make a difference in your life because you don't want to believe in your worth. So Holy Spirit can only participate in assisting us to the degree that we are willing to accept that assistance. And again, when I tell my clients, you're creating your own suffering, they get offended. And why would I create this? Well, who's making you think the thoughts that you're thinking? Who is making you believe that you're a victim? Only you by your agreement to holding that story as your reality. But the minute you decide to try something else, you begin to listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit that is only going to say, you're powerful. And as I was shown when I did a plant medicine journey, everybody gets an Oscar for the performance that we're playing. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You get an Oscar because you're using the power of creation to create what you want to experience. And if you're stuck inside of that story that you're powerless, then you want to experience that. Sit with the acceptance that what you're feeling is what you want to experience. And it won't take long before you realize, I don't want to keep experiencing this. I want to experience something better, funner, more joyful. Well, it requires that desire, that willingness to try something else before you can try something else. I mean, it's such a simple thing, but yet it's very difficult to a mind that is conditioned into believing that it is powerless or it has power over others. That's a really it I get it. It's a tough thing to do. And then there's the journey of the healing process, and that can take however long it takes to move ourselves from that place of victimization. And again, we are always going to acknowledge that what happened happened. That is never in question. The Course in Miracles does not want you to have that level of uh just it's very difficult for somebody, very, very, very difficult until you're very advanced on your journey. And this journey is like grades in school. We all start in kindergarten. Actually, we start before kindergarten, and we're learning to crawl and to walk and then we get into kindergarten. And then we have to go like grades in school through the process of healing. And you can't ask somebody to say, I'm not a victim at the very beginning of their journey. But we start with, yes, this happened. Do you want to find another way of dealing with it? That is the trick. Do you want to look at it differently? Do you want to change your perception and acknowledge they did what they did because they didn't know any different? But you don't have to think that there was something wrong with you because of what happened. And to begin to accept that there's nothing wrong with you is the beginning of the journey to find out what's right with you. And that's when we begin to learn who we are as God created us according to Jesus, which is speaking of a loving God, not the God of the Bible that's bipolar. You know, sometimes it's mean to people, sometimes it's loving. Jesus was consistent about a loving God. Why does the church not consistently speak of a loving God when it uses Jesus as, the savior? If we're going to use Jesus as the savior, let's follow what Jesus said. Course in Miracles was given to us by Jesus, basically taking what he taught 2,000 years ago and not distorting it with religious dogma, with politics, because the whole Catholic Church was created based on politics. You can go back to discover the beginning of the Catholic Church, pure politics. So let's go back to this. Sentence 12. This is the last sentence in paragraph 4. That is why you cannot create and are filled with fear about what you make. The reason we cannot create a different experience for ourselves, meaning we cannot create heaven on earth yet, is because we are filled with fear about the things that we have made. And we have made up stories. We have made up identities for ourselves as victims. And when we make up an identity that I'm a victim or that I'm a bully, it's very scary to undo that story. It's very, very difficult. I know, again, I've been there, done that, to admit, especially if you have been physically harmed, to admit that you're not a victim of the physical harm that you experience. Maybe you were physically tortured. Maybe you were physically hurt in such a way that you have the physical evidence of it. Maybe you lost an arm in the war. Maybe somebody tortured you to the point that I've seen stories like this. Maybe you lost an eye or your hand was cut off because you did something. When we have those physical evidences of things that have happened, the mind with the ego, only with the ego, wants to stay inside of that agreement. This happened to me, therefore I can't do any better. That's why we are always so in awe of people who move beyond, especially their physical limitations, and they can do things that we didn't think that they could. But that's because they don't let the ego tell them that they're limited because of what happened to them. So we are inspired by people who move beyond limitations, but it's rare the one who is willing to do that for themselves. It's wonderful to see, oh, they did it, but I can't. We have to first start with accepting what has happened has happened. It is what it is. I lost my eye, I lost my eye. I lost my mom, I lost my sister, I lost my child, I lost my home. We have to accept that what is is. The Course in Miracles is attempting to free us from our suffering, not to make us feel bad, and feel like we have to deny what happened to us. That is not the point. The point is to come to know that inside of you is an eternal essence, that when you have the death experience, that eternal soul goes on forever. The Course wants us to create a relationship with that eternal aspect of ourselves so that we don't have to experience it after we die, so that we can be born again to know that part of us, which was there when we were little children, to cultivate a relationship with that part of us that is loving and innocent and gentle and joyful. We have to cultivate a relationship with the goodness that is within. We cannot wake up from this dream and ascend to a higher dimension if we don't accept the goodness that is within. That means that we have to accept the goodness that is in others, even if it's covered up with their hurt selves. And it's the hurt part of us that hurts others. The good never hurts another. So the Course wants us to understand, how did we get to the point that we can hurt anybody? And it's because for thousands of years, we have been trained into believing that there are good and bad people. When you buy into that story, then you're going to have evidence of the good and the bad. You ate of the tree of good and evil, so you have to see it in the world. But once you decide that God did not create any of that, God only created what is good, and you align with that, then you must be the one who activates the goodness that allows for the forgiveness of the hurt that has happened to you. That is what liberates us, because that is what states your claim to the truth of who you are as God created you. But you cannot be that goodness and experience all the goodness that comes with that, because you're not vibing at that frequency. So you cannot be just attracting the good into your life. You may get glimpses of it, but if you believe you're a victim, all you're saying is bring on more of that frequency. Uh, and and believe it or not, your ego is saying, I like that suffering. So we have to learn to observe the ego and realize that it is just a voice inside of us. It's a voice that we can override. It's a voice that we don't have to believe. Just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. Just because you believe it doesn't mean it's you. This is a journey of liberation. But you have to want freedom more than you want to be right about your suffering. No amount of teaching can make that decision for you. And the Course is a course in mastering your own mind by training it to know the difference of the two thought systems and then picking the one. Because when you pick the thought system of God, you then have to become that being. You have to allow yourself to be that loving being that God created you to be. You have to accept your goodness. And when you accept your goodness, the healing power of that decision is unlimited. So much about you will begin to heal, but it starts with your mind. Your mind has to be corrected first. From there, everything else changes. Then the body follows, the emotions are released, and then the body feels the freedom, the liberation of carrying all that density. And then what begins to happen is your body will begin to be activated into higher frequencies. You'll go through a period of purification, of transformation, and before you know it, of ascension. You'll be thinking such high vibes because you'll only be looking for the good, because you're looking through the eyes of what is good in you. And once you see only the good out in the world, that will be the happy dream. And I can assure you that if you are committed to co-creating a happy dream, you have to recognize that it's going to take us a while to get to that. But we are very close. I am going to say that this summer we're going to experience some big activations. Either you are conscious of that and you will be welcoming, because that means that it's going to be crumbling more of the old to have that new, the ascension into the new. The old has to fall. Either you are going to have your eyes wide open and you're going to deliberately choose to move along with what is good for the greater good, or you will stay in a state of fear because you're concerned only what is best for you. And that's okay. But that's pure ego. Ego is selfish. It's all about me. It's service to self. Service to the greater good means that you want for others what you want for you. And service to the greater good can only happen when you come from acceptance of the good that you are. This is such amazing information. This is so important to understand that our you have to acknowledge your self-worth. You have to acknowledge that you are valuable to God. If you're here, is because you are worth being here, because you mattered so much that God wanted you to be created. When you accept your self-worth, then that's when you begin to really accept your power to create. Because if you accept your worth, then you'll decide, I am, I am, I'm worth better than victim thinking, victim consciousness. Those are two separate frequencies. If you want what is going to be more fun, more joyful, more equitable for all beings, you have got to believe you are worth that. Somebody with victim mentality or bully thinking is not going to be at this frequency. So the world is bifurcating. The groups that are going to attract, the bullies are going to attract more victims, the victims are going to attract more bullies, or those who are going to co-create, and everybody's going to have a wonderful time. That choice is right here, right now. And there's still time to get your mind trained so that you can move through these changes consciously. Otherwise, if you're unconscious, it's going to feel like the world's falling apart, because it is. The mask is cracking. And if you can't see that, is because the mask in you has not cracked yet. So with that, if anybody has any comments, anything you want to share, by all means, unmute yourselves. Otherwise, thank you for being here. And as I said, this ascension with the Course in Miracles is something that gets transmitted every single Wednesday. We meet at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. And if you want to go into a deeper dive, join us in the Awareness Academy and join the membership. Be part of that community that we just started. It's really exciting to be at the beginning of it. So, all right. Anybody want to say anything? If not, I'm going to turn this off. See you guys in the next class, those of you who are in the membership, and otherwise see you here next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.